Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Upton Park, Brahma Kumari's monthly talk. I'm glad everybody could make the time to join us on a nice Sunday evening, at least for those based in the UK. Today, we are together for a very interesting topic. I think to me, it feels like a need of the hour sort of a topic, which is walking your true path. As soon as I saw the title, a few things came to my mind, saying things along the lines of people are struggling nowadays a little bit with navigating the world of the challenges that it is bringing for us. How do people make decisions that are good for them? How do people realize what is their true path? How do they discover it in the first place? How do they find the courage and the strength to walk that path, you know, without the influences of others, but also at the same time taking people's help, people's support, living with in conjunction with the world. So a lot of things came to my mind, and I'm so excited that we have the lovely Geoff Marlow with us here. He is just going to quickly introduce him. Geoff has more than 35 years of professional experience helping organizations throughout Europe, Asia, and the US. And he helps these organizations create cultures in order to sort of enable these companies to flourish in an increasingly uncertain and unpredictable future, which we kind of also need that for ourselves, not just these organizations. So I'm glad you're here with us. You've been a student with the Brahma Kumaris since 1990. You're a teacher with us as well. You conduct PK workshops and events and seminars, just like the one that you're hosting for us today. We're very, very happy to have you. Just a note for everybody in the audience, we're going to have some time towards the end of the session for a little bit of a Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute towards the end, or if you do not wish to unmute, you can share your questions on the chat as well. I'm happy to relay and be the mic for you. So enough of me, taking up your time. The floor is all yours. Please share your wisdom with us.
All right, Harvey, thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, so this topic of walking your true path. I had the great fortune over many years of spending a reasonable amount of time with one of the very senior teachers of the Brahma Kumaris, a wonderful woman by the name of Dadi Janki, who was at one point was actually the administrative head, but prior to that was one of the additional administrative heads. And I first met her I think it was in 1990. I mean, I came across the Brahma Kumaris on the 20th of August, 1990. So it was literally 34 years ago last week that I first set foot in a BK centre here in Cambridge, where I've lived for the last 40 years. And it was very interesting meeting Dadi for the first time, because I didn't know who she was. Just thought she was just some senior teacher. I had no idea that she was someone who'd been involved with the Brahma Kumaris since its inception in 1937 in Hyderabad, Sindh, which is now part of Pakistan after the 1947 partition of India. But there was something about her that was quite curious, and when a couple of times I had the opportunity to introduce her at events and be the MC for an event. And I always used to say, it was slightly teasy, but it was also very, very true, that the best things in life come in small packages, because she was about 4'10" tall, but an absolute powerhouse. And so I had this fortune of, after about 2 or 3 years of regular study with the Brahma Kumaris, I got to know Dadi, and she knew me because I was, someone who was able to present and perform. It was always something I'd done professionally as a consultant to organizations. And so I ended up being invited to teachers' meetings. And so I used to spend a fair bit of time with her when she used to live in the UK. Most of the time, she would do quite a lot of traveling, but she was either based in London or based in the retreat centre at Oxford. And I would often be confused about my own path, because I'm sort of I was going to say gifted, but maybe the other term is afflicted, by being too clever for my own good. In the sense that, you know, if you measure my IQ, it's well, I did have it measured actually in my 20s, and it was 152, which is the top something like the top 2% of people. And you might think, wow, that's amazing, how fortunate. The trouble is, it means that you can end up getting lost in your own cleverness. And it can be as much a curse as a blessing. I think that, you know, there's always two sides to any talent or gift or capability that you have. And so I would often get confused about what path I should follow, because I could see there were multiple paths available to me. And as Gabby said on the introduction, today's world is very confusing. You know, we do live in an increasingly uncertain and unpredictable world. You know, you know, who would have thought there would have been another land war in Europe after 70 years, you know, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And then we're all responding to what technology opportunities are provided by technology, but also some of the challenges as various things that were stable and seem to be part of the stable fabric of life seem to be less stable because the technology disintermediates or changes the nature of the world and the way we encounter the world, including how we're doing this evening. You know, it wasn't many years ago that the only way to do these kind of talks and sessions was physically for the speaker to be with you in person. But here we are able to do this over the internet whilst you're all sitting there in your front rooms, drinking your tea or watching the football on the other screen or whatever it is that you're doing. So the world has changed in quite substantive ways. And even back then, you know, 30 odd years ago, I could see that I could continue to travel down the technology direction. I mean, my degree was in electronic engineering, so I could do that. I was doing consulting to organizations through a big international consulting firm, doing stuff around how do you create cultures of innovation so organizations can adapt to these challenges. You know, I could be a manager, I could go into an organization, get a senior job. And I was always confused about what I should do. And very often I would go and ask Daddy Janky her advice. And she was very skillful because she was wise enough to know that she shouldn't make your decisions for you. And that I think two of her great gifts were her own spiritual power meant that she was able to stay free from the temptation of telling you what you should do. You know, like we all like to be asked our opinions, and we're often very willing to give them, even when we're not asked them. You know, what you should do is X, what you. She was very skilled at not doing that because of this spiritual power. But also the other aspect of her spiritual power was that in her presence, you could actually have the experience of your own fog lifting. You know, like in the morning sometimes when, I suppose we're getting into that time of year now where you could have a mist in the morning or a fog in the morning. And when the sun comes up, it all clears and suddenly there's, you know, clear sky and you can see in the distance. But until it clears, everything's murky and you can't see your way forward. And I can certainly remember having experiences with her where I turned up with a question and would sit in front of her, and she would always say her customary greeting when you met her, apart from Om Shanti, of course, was ek minute drishti. So 1 minute of seeing each other with spiritual vision. And so she would do this, and very often what I experienced was that the clouds inside my own head that I had created by shuffling up the dust in my own mind would clear, and I would be able to see the answer to the question that I had. And I could actually feel my inner state calm down and become more settled and less agitated. And she could obviously feel that too, because after the minute was up, she would look at me and she would say, "So you had a question?" And she knew that the question had been answered. It wasn't like a spooky thing where she'd somehow snuck into your head and told you what the answer was. It was just literally like the sun had risen, the fog had dispersed, the mist had gone away, and I could see for myself with clarity what it was I should do. So I had that experience a few times. But the other thing that I had with her on more than one occasion, there must have been 2, 3, 4 occasions where I went to specifically ask her advice about what I should do, because I could see I'd got several options in front of me that could significantly dictate the path of my life. As I was saying, you know, I could do technology, I could continue to consult, I could go into management. And she was always very sweet. She would say something like, she would often speak in the third person, or people would translate at least in the third person. And so, because I don't speak Hindi, apart from the odd phrase, but, you know, obviously she would speak in Hindi to be clear, and then there would be a translator in between. And so the explanation that was given was often in the third person. So it's like Daddy says. So she would say, Daddy's very pleased that we have this relationship, and that, you know, we have these conversations when you come to Oxford and we speak together. And she said, as to your question, Daddy will meditate on this, and you should also. And it seemed such a profound answer at the time that it was very satisfying. And then she'd usually give you a toli, like a little sweet of some kind. And you'd leave her room, and the next person would come in. It was in the queue to get advice from Daddy. And you'd be halfway down the corridor going back to your room or whatever. And suddenly you'd realize she didn't answer my question, right? She didn't say, I think you should do this or you should do this. Always what she said is, you should reflect on this yourself. You should meditate on this, have yoga on this. And she said she would also. And the other aspect of her advice, which it took me years and years and years to understand, and what I really think is the key message to tonight's topic about how do you walk your true path, is that she would say, just do what's in front of you. And I would, at the time, be very frustrated with that, because I said, well, look, there are all these different things in front of me. You know, there's the technical work, or there's the consulting work, or there's the managerial work. You know, all of these are in front of me. But I think what she was saying, and what it took me, as I say, many years to understand, and I think I kind of now not only understand, but it's actually what I do, is in every moment there is a situation in front of you. Like right now, I'm speaking to you over this Zoom connection. I'm, you know, looking into my camera and whatever and doing my thing. But what I'm also doing is I'm bringing into action qualities and attributes that are inside me. And I'm doing that without having a particular agenda other than to share something useful about the topic. And it took me a long time to realize how much we're programmed in life. And I think this is very strong in the West, but I think it's also true in other cultures, that we're programmed to go out and make a success of our lives, to go and work out what it is we want to be and what we want to become, and have a goal. So it's like we start off by formulating the end point that we want. You know, I want this particular type of career, or this particular type of relationship, or this particular type of house or possession or position, or whatever it might be. We're encouraged to aim for a particular goal. And so what we do is, it's like there's an internal process inside the self, which starts off with, I'm not completely happy, fulfilled, and contented. Therefore, there's something missing. What's missing is out there for me to go and find. And when I find it and acquire it or get it, then I will become happy, fulfilled, and contented. So it's a kind, you could call it an outside in way of living life. There's something outside of me that I need to connect to, bring into myself in order to feel happy, fulfilled, and contented. And what I think the big difference, and it is really a 180-degree turnaround, when we think about a spiritual purpose in life, or a spiritual goal in life, or a spiritual path in life, or just to allow our path to unfold in a more spiritual way, is we start off at the same place. We start off with, I'm not completely happy, fulfilled, and contented, therefore there's something missing. But the big difference is, what's missing is in me, not out there. Now that immediately confuses part of our brain, because it goes, well, hang on a second, if it's in me, how come it's missing? But it's in the self, it's in there, it's just not manifesting itself. It's just not coming out into our actions and interactions. So this is the inside out way of life, where once we begin to understand what are the qualities and attributes, the values, the virtues that are inside the self that matter to me, and bring them more into my actions and interactions, then magically I become more happy, fulfilled, and contented, because what I'm doing is I'm being more authentic. I'm being more true to myself. And the challenge for us is we've got lots of other influences around us, other people, circumstances, situations, roles that we play, that are pulling us into a different direction. And so the challenge for us is that we're having to navigate our way through the situations that we find ourselves in. And this is where I think Daddy Yankee's wisdom was, where she was saying, do what's in front of you, because at every moment there is a scene in the great drama of life which is unfolding in front of us. And the question is, what action am I going to perform in this moment? You know, what step am I going to take? What's the next step for me to take immediately in front of me to do what's in front of me? And I think that's why, you know, when I chose the little quotation that was on the flyer for tonight's program, this Spanish poet, Antonio Machado, who was a favorite of a former colleague of mine, and his quote here from the poem that's usually translated as Traveller, usually called Traveller, obviously written in Spanish, but traveller, there is no path. The path is made by walking. So we've got this tendency to want to know what is the end point, what is the goal, what is the thing that we're trying to get out there, where are we trying to arrive, what is the position or what possessions or what role or what job or what career or whatever it might be. You know, we're encouraged generally by lots of different actors and forces around us to try and come up with the answer to that question. Whereas what I'm suggesting, and what I think is a much more useful way of conducting life, is to go inside the self and say, what is it that's in me that is trying to bring itself into being in the world through me, through my actions and interactions? And this is where meditation and silence become quite important factors, quite important angles or aspects of living that are not just about, you know, let me calm down and get a little bit of peace and quiet despite all the chaos in life, but it's really, how do I get my sense of direction? How do I tap into my own inner compass? Conscience is one aspect of that, of course. It's like inside ourselves, we kind of have an intuitive sense of knowing what the right thing is to do. And then the challenge is, how much do I live my life in accordance with that? How much do I take the next step, the step that's in front of me, in a way that's in alignment with my true values, with my true qualities? Because the more I learn to take each step in a way that is consistent with my inner qualities, the more I'm in touch with my intuition, the more I'm in touch with my conscience, when I make my choices moment by moment, then the more naturally my path will unfold in front of me. This path that will lead to me feeling increasingly happy, fulfilled, and contented. Not because of what I get from out there, but because of what I'm actually bringing into the scenes of this great drama of life in which I'm one of many actors. So this was something that has taken me a very long time, really, to first of all understand, intellectually or conceptually, but then to shift to a way of being which is not always, oh, I think I know what I should do here, and then rushing off in that direction, but a more measured way of being where I'm making decisions moment by moment, sensing what I need to do, trying to do the right thing, trying to take the right action, not always getting it right. When I don't get it right, noticing maybe either straight away or later that I made a choice that somehow deep inside the self I knew wasn't the right choice. And it's through that process of observing myself making good decisions or making less good decisions, decisions that are aligned with my inner qualities and values, and decisions that aren't, and seeing the difference, that I gradually build up the muscle of staying true to myself and staying on my own true path. So this is the shift. The shift is from trying to work out what it is that I want from out there that will make me happy, fulfilled, and contented, to looking inside the self and saying, what am I on this planet to bring into being? What is looking to manifest itself through me in the world? And this is quite an unusual concept compared to today's thinking, largely because of the scientific revolution, and before that, the Age of Enlightenment, which started in 1685 and went on to 1815. And that was the point at which people like Isaac Newton here in Cambridge and René Descartes in France were really starting to put the foundations in place of the way we typically look at the world in our kind of outside in way. Like, what do I have to work out how to go get out there and then bring it into my inner being? And before that period, there was a lot more intuitive sense of being in tune with an unfolding of reality in the world. So the Greeks had this idea of the divine logos. It's where ultimately we ended up with the word logic coming from. But the logos was where the universe was unfolding moment by moment. And the aim of the philosopher, who was the person who was trying to understand this unfolding, was, and to live in alignment with it, was trying to take the right action at each moment to allow this unfolding to happen through the self and bring into the world what was naturally emerging through this sense that there is a divine meaning, a deeper meaning to everything in life. And the challenge was, as philosophers were discovering 2,500 years ago, when they were doing this thinking and practice in Greece, people like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, what they were discovering was there was a part of the self that was getting caught up in, but what can I go and get? And how can I get ahead of the next person? And what can I do in order to win? And so there was this competitive, go out and get what I want and bring it into the self. And once one starts to do that, then it looks like that's the way to live one's life. We can see over the past 2,500 years, and then particularly in the last 300 years, there's been very much an acceleration away from this understanding of the underlying unfolding of a cosmic order. Interestingly, this is something that was rediscovered by physicists about 100 years ago. And in fact, about 60 years ago, there was a book written by a famous physicist called David Bohm. The book was called Wholeness and the Implicate Order. And the idea is that the order of the universe is enfolded already within the fabric of the universe, and it unfolds. So the implicate, in Latin, implicare, was enfolded within. So the idea is that this is unfolding moment by moment. And so the challenge for us is, how do I, as an individual, act in a way that is in alignment with this unfolding? Because if I operate in a way that's in alignment with this unfolding, what happens is things unfold in a very enriching and purposeful and enjoyable way. If I get out of alignment with this unfolding, then I end up in struggle and difficulty and confusion, that kind of fog that I was mentioning earlier. And in a way, again, you could say that today's world is more confusing because a lot of the old certainties that people had about life. I mean, when I did my degree, it was pretty clear what my career path was supposed to be. You become an engineer, and then you become a project manager, and then maybe you become a manager and a director of a company. But the pathway was understood. The roles were available out there. Organizations typically, it had started to change, but typically organizations would take you on with the expectation that you would work for the same company the whole of your career, and that when you retired, you would have a pension through the company and it would give you a good lifestyle in retirement. There was a lot more stability than, say, with my son, who's now in his mid-30s, who studied architecture at university, decided that that wasn't really what he wanted to do, and has ended up in a field which didn't actually exist when he was at school, and which the careers advisor couldn't have advised him to go into because it wasn't an available career. So he does visual effects for movies and TV shows, and that's so he works for one of the CGI computer generated imagery companies. Now, if he'd gone to a careers director when he was 16 and said, what are my options? And of course he did. They would say something like, well, your skills and your interests probably mean architecture is a good thing to go into. So what he has done, and obviously some of the understanding that has helped him to make his choices has come through the spiritual practice that myself and my wife have been involved in for this past 30 odd years, has been to act in a way that is in alignment with this unfolding of the logos. Now, that was the Greek word for it. Sanskrit had a similar concept. It was called the ruta, and it's normally written as the letter R with a dot underneath it and then TA. But why that's interesting, I think, is when you do understand a little bit of Sanskrit and some of the modern Indian languages that derive from Sanskrit, this idea of the rata, the way of unfolding of the universe, points to something about our own consciousness and our own sense of self in the world. Because there's a word that you become quite familiar with when you start to study Raj Yoga meditation with the Brahma Kumaris, which is the word smriti. And it's a commonly used word in Indian languages. So it's there in Hindi, it's there in other Indian languages. It's usually translated as remembrance, or, you have the day of Smriti, which is the memorial day of someone's passing on. Some of you may know that Dadi Prakashmani, who was the administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris from 1969 to 2007, she's just had her Smriti Day. In fact, it's today, the 25th of August. But also Smriti means, if you look at the etymology of it, it's the root part of Smriti is from Ruta. So the idea is that you are adopting a consciousness, an awareness of yourself, which is in alignment with the Ruta. So if you get that wrong, then you end up with a vismriti, a smriti, an awareness of yourself in the world that is not aligned with the ruta. And so what does this mean? This means that I lose my awareness in my positions, my goals, my achievements, my roles, my relationships, my ideas, and I lose sight of the fact that I am the spiritual actor, the soul that animates this body, that is playing a part on the stage of life. As Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage and men and women are players. We have our exits and entrances, and in our time play many parts. So the whole of the Brahma Kumaris philosophy is about learning how to understand the self as a soul, as a spiritual being, so that I can cultivate this smriti, this true awareness of self, that then allows me to be in touch with what is unfolding through me and through others, and that gives me the guidance that I need in order to walk my own true path. And we get inspired by people around us. I mean, I mentioned Daddy Yankee. She was an inspiring character, but her part is not my part. And I always remember one of the things that she said to me after I don't know, known her for maybe 10 years. She said to me, now go and do the service that Daddy can't do. Because 4'10" Indian woman who doesn't speak a huge amount of English in a white sari is probably not going to be able to function in a Fortune 500 boardroom in front of directors who want to know, how does this fit in with Chris Argyris's work, or what does Peter Senge say about that, or how does Peter Drucker look at this? And so if you're in that world, then you need to have an understanding that gives you language and terminology that is meaningful to the people who are in that world. They're not specifically looking for spiritual knowledge, but if you're able to help them get away from identifying with their roles and to see their roles as something that they play and not who they are. And the majority of my work professionally is this: it's helping senior executives understand that they are not the decision maker. Their job is to ensure that good decisions get made and implemented. So they have to create the conditions for that to happen. And this is only something that has emerged because of following this idea over the past 30 years that I have to work and operate and act in alignment with my qualities and my values and my virtues, which I discover and continue to discover through this practice of reflection and doing the inner work to understand the self and to understand what are the right choices for me to make in each situation I find myself in. This is actually there in the Bhagavad Gita. You know, many of you will be familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, and in fact, the most popular verse in the whole of the 18 chapters of the Gita is allegedly chapter 2, verse 47. And in this chapter, it effectively is where God is advising the lead character, Arjuna, that his duty is to perform the right action, not to chase after the fruit. The fruit comes by its own law. If you perform the right action, then life unfolds in a way where the universe notices that you are on purpose, that you are taking steps in alignment with your virtues and your values. You're allowing the universe, you're allowing the Rata or the Logos to do its bit of emerging through you, through the steps that you take. And so the universe says, well, you're clearly doing the right thing. So here you are. Here's this opportunity. Here, well, you're going to need this technology. You're going to need this car. You're going to need this situation. You're going to need to encounter these people. And the universe then sets up in a very natural and easy way the opportunities that you need in order to be given the opportunities that enable you to continue to unfold on your path. But if you don't understand that that's how the universe is wired up, he says, going back to his electronics degree, if you don't understand that that's how it works, you end up struggling to try and work out, well, what is it I want, and what will make me happy, and how do I get that? And you start pursuing it and you go, oh, this is hard work. Is this really what I want? And I've got that thing, but did it really make me happy? Or I've found this job, but I'm not really sure it's me. And all of that confusion comes about because we get caught up in this, the answer is out there, as opposed to the answer is always to be found inside the self, and therefore brought into action and interaction in whatever scene and whatever situation is in front of you in any moment. And that was why, as I say, it took me a long time to get past the frustration of when Daddy Yankee used to say to me, just do what's in front of you. And I'd be tearing my hair out. Don't have much left now, but I'd be tearing my hair out about, but should I do this or should I do that? Because what I wanted somebody to give me the map. And of course, there isn't a map because, as Antonio Machado said, not only is there no map, there's no path. You make the path step by step as you put one foot in front of the other. The only question is, do you put one foot in front of the other in a way that is in tune with who you really are and the unfolding of who you really are? Or do you go here and there and get caught up in side streets and end up in a bog and falling off a cliff and all this sort of stuff because you're not clear about where your direction needs to come from? And your direction can only come from inside. So in a funny way, it's sort of useful that the world has become more uncertain and unpredictable, because it's making people question whether the traditional view of life as something where, you know, your parents said, go and be a lawyer, go and be an engineer, go and be a doctor, and everything will be, you know, an accountant, get a professional career, go do that, and everything will be wonderful. And people are like, well, you know, is that really what I'm here to do? Is that really my part? And so once you've understood that the way this is put together, the way the logos, the ruta, the Chinese have a similar concept. It's called the li. So the idea is, or even in Taoism, you have the idea of the Tao is the unfolding of the way of life. So once you have this understanding that life is giving you guidance all the time, you just need to be attentive to what are the qualities in me that are being called upon, that as I bring them forth, as I bring them into my actions and interactions, will ensure that what I'm doing is unfolding my life along my own true path. And when I go off the path, then I become more sensitive to picking up the clues that, oh, hang on, I think I may have gone off path here because this is feeling like a struggle. This is feeling like I'm not sure this is right for me. That's a good sign. It's a really helpful sign because it enables me then to say, okay, I need to just recenter myself and reflect and just check in, and then take my next step in a way that's more in alignment with who I am and how I will then unfold on my path moving forward. So we're doing time-wise. We're a couple of minutes earlier than we really originally scheduled, but it feels like a good time to ask Garvey for questions, and whether any have come in or whether you've got one up your sleeve.
Definitely have a few up my sleeve, I will be honest. I could 100% listen to you share more, but I will wait for the audience to share their questions first, if anybody has anything.
Yes, good morning. I'm Shanti. And Brother Geoff, hi, my name is Sandeep. I'm from the USA. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Whereabouts in the US are you?
I'm in North Carolina.
Oh, okay. So you're sort of East Coast-ish. So what are you, about 6 hours difference? So
Yeah, 5 hours. Yes, sir.
five
your
hours.
time.
Okay, you're on Eastern time. Yeah.
Yes, and I have a liking for, you know, the Upton's thing. But let me really ask my question here is that the introspective journey, of making that decision through meditation and silence, I have realized that the answer sometimes changes, right? So what was right yesterday, in introspection in 2 days from now, that answer may change for me. It seems like there's so many dynamics in the universe that sometimes change that. So if you know, if I feel like I can't manipulate the message I'm getting, so I'm very true to that because I have a best of 3 option. I do meditation a couple of times to get an answer on a situation. But my question is, answers can change, right? I mean, from what the Sister Janki told you, things can change and evolve where what was right yesterday can be wrong today. Is that a concept?
Yeah, I mean, certainly things do change, you know, and it could be that the action that you were going to take in a certain situation the day before was the right action because that was the situation. But if you only learnt about it the day after, then by then you want to put the action into you want to take that action, and now the situation has changed and moved on. So it's certainly true. But what I would like to avoid us inferring from having said that is that life goes all over the place, because what it's doing, I think, when we have that experience that this feels like the right thing to do, and then the next day something else feels like the right thing to do, it's usually because there's a deeper alignment, that those two apparent poles are pointing towards something deeper in the self that if I can get in touch with that, then it won't feel like life is flip-flopping from side to side. And I think that what tends to happen is we do get influenced by circumstances and situations, and we do end up adopting an awareness of self, a smriti, or more technically, I guess, a vismriti, that is to do with particular role or relationship. I mean, the classic example would be the reason I came in contact with the Brahma Kumaris at all in 1990 was I'd been off work with stress. My doctor had signed me off. And the reason that I'd ended up off work was because my son, Alexander, who, as I say, my wife and I had arranged a little birthday party for him. I'd arranged with my company I worked for here in Cambridge to have the day off work. So I'd got authorization from my boss to Alex's birthday. And about 3 or 4 weeks before his birthday, I was with a client in Holland. So Philips, the electronics company, although these days they're more medical devices. Back then they did TVs and audio and all this sort of stuff. There was a major project. It was the biggest project we'd ever done as a company. Philips was our biggest client, and I was designated as the project manager. And the only day that the client could hold the kickoff meeting in the next 6 weeks or so for the project, and you get all the people together that needed to be together, was of course the 16th. And when this was announced to me, I kind of had the experience of literally being torn. Literally, it's the clearest experience I can ever recall of feeling like I was torn in half, because half of me, Geoff the dad, wants to be at Alex's birthday party, and half of me, Geoff the professional consultant engineer, wants to be at the client meeting. And you can't be in two places at once. We didn't have Zoom and stuff like that. But anyway, you'd have to be there physically. And I literally felt like I was torn in half. And what's going on there is I'm in the smriti, or technically vismriti, of the father, and then the vismriti of the consultant. And I'm flip-flopping between the two. And so it looks like, not just from one day to the next, but literally from 10 minutes to the next. Obviously, the right thing to do is to be there for his birthday party, because I didn't have a particularly close relationship with my father, and I wanted to be a good dad to Alexander. And so it's really important being at his birthday party. So there's a lot riding on that. And then 5 minutes later, yeah, but this is my job. It's the biggest client. It's the biggest opportunity of my career. It's how I get my money. It's how I pay the mortgage, and all of that psychological investment was there. And so this inability to choose between two things was the very reason I came in contact with the Brahma Kumaris. And it was when, on my very first evening, on the 20th of August 1990, this young lady who was taking us that evening said to me, "Your problem is you don't know who you are." I said, I'm sure I do. I have certificates, so I can bring them in and show you. She said, no, you think you're Geoff the dad. You think you're Alexander's dad. You think you're Alison's husband. You think you're Sadie and Arthur's son. You think you're Mary and Anne's brother. You think you're the consultant, works for those are all roles that you play, and you are the actor who plays those roles. And in that moment when she said those, I had that experience of like, it's my electronics engineer, right? Like a 50 kilowatt light bulb went on inside my head at that moment. And I could literally see, oh my God, there's only one of me in here. There's me, the actor that plays all these different roles. And so what I think you're describing is when I lose that kind of inner connection and that inner clarity that's who I am. And I don't just mean understanding it as a concept, as a belief system. I mean, when I'm not actually experiencing that as my lived identity in the world, then all of these things that seem this is the right choice, and then this is the right choice, and this is the right choice, can occur. And I do think it's a sign that I need to be, or I say I need to be, I mean, it's a way of expressing it, but it will be helpful for me to be able to go deeper into who I am, so that I'm at a place that's stable within my identity, that makes it easier to make these choices, so they don't seem like things are flip-flopping around. And because if things are flip-flopping around, it becomes very difficult to make any decision, because if I make decision A, then in 5 minutes or half an hour or tomorrow, I'm going to think actually A is wrong and B is right. And then a bit later, I'm going to think B is right. And, you know, and then I'm going to talk to my friend and I'm going to say, you know, Gavri, what do you think? And she's going to say, well, you know, this. And then I say, but well, yeah, okay. And then I talk to Umang and he says, well, actually, you know what? I don't think that's right. I think, and you just don't know what to do because you're getting so much advice from so many people. Again, that's why I think that Adi Janki would say to me, you know, this is, you know, something that you should meditate on, and I will also. And because she was so clear that that was the way to get the answer, that satisfied me in the moment. And it was only when I was halfway down the corridor that I suddenly realized, hang on, she didn't tell me what to do. Because I have to learn how to know what the decision is. I have to have my own agency. I have to be able to do my own sense making and my own decision making so that my action taking is true to who I am and it's unfolding my true path.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate the insight, and I'll try my best to go more into the introspection and meditation to get that light. But thank you. It was great seeing you today.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the question. And I indulged myself a little bit in a longer answer because we've finished the main session a couple of minutes earlier. So
we appreciate it all the more. The more you share, the more I want to just stay in the session. The floor is still open for a few questions from the audience if anybody has anything to ask.
Hi, Geoff, and hi, Gavi. I just want to say, but you know, knowing that we have to go in and look inside, why is it that we continue to become? I'm speaking for myself here. That resistance to go inward.
I mean, resistance is one way of framing it. Certainly, it's a valid way of framing it. But I think also another way of framing it is habit. You know, we just have habitual ways of acting that are there, and it's easy to do them. They don't take any effort because they feel natural and they just unfold. There's an exercise, you've probably done this, but a lot of people will do it in workshops and things where they ask people to fold their arms. So you fold your arms like this, and I look, and now you have to look and see, okay, well, I folded my arms with my left arm on top. This is my left arm. I don't know what the camera's doing for the display you're seeing, but anyway, where I am, this is my left arm. So my left arm is on top and my right arm is underneath. And then they say, okay, well, what you need to do now is refold your arms, but with the opposite arm on the top. And so you do it like this, and you go, oh God, that feels really, really weird. And you look around the room, and actually half the people have got it like this, and half the people have got it like this. Everybody finds the opposite way of doing it weird because of what they've become accustomed to. I think that we're just so used to operating in a outside-in world with everybody else operating outside in, and all the conversation is outside in, and all the advertisements are outside in, and everything is outside in. Just understanding that actually, you know, it's better and more useful for me to operate inside out. That's the first step. There are many steps after that of, oh, okay, I'm doing it outside in again. Okay, let me check and change and move forward. So it does take time. And I think that giving oneself a bit of a break and not being too hard on oneself is really, really important. That when I continually make the same mistake again and again and again and again, that I don't give up hope. And I just realized this is part of the journey because I built up these habits over a very long time. In many cases, multiple births, not just, you know, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, whatever it might be.
Yeah, thank you.
But the wonderful thing I think with under that is that what we're always doing with this is we're always getting closer to truth. Now, we've lived in falsehood for so long that actually what we're doing all the time with this is I'm getting deeper and deeper and closer to my own truth. And if I understand that, then I know that the answer is there, and I know that I will reach my destination if I stay on track.
Hi, Geoff. Hi, Garvi. I am currently in the middle of making a decision, and there are two paths that I can take, and they will seriously affect my life, just like you were describing a couple of minutes earlier. And as soon as you said you need to do work to go inside and look deeper, immediately my brain is like, okay, but what are the steps to getting there? And you did tell us two of them. And then I'm like, okay, but what would it feel like? And what are the milestones of knowing that I have gone deeper? I'm also operating within a deadline under which I need to make this decision. So those are like the immediate next questions that come to my head. I don't know if you have any answers to that, or just a way for me to like push forward, because I'm always kind of looking for like a 5-point plan on doing something, on like the 10-step version of something. And that definitely is one of my pitfalls, and I know that, but I'm looking for a way to make this easier, because this is a very new concept to me, just like you said. Don't know if you had any thoughts there.
Well, it is about a journey, and it is about the other analogy I like to use. It's like building muscles. About 7 years ago now, is it 7 or 8 years ago now? I don't know why. We were on holiday in Devon, and I walked up a hill there that the locals, the actual name of the hill is Shadycombe Road, and the locals call it Heart Attack Hill because it's like this steep. And I walked up it with my son, and I got to the top, and we were both a bit out of breath. And I didn't have a heart attack. Maybe I'm not completely past it. Anyway, I got back to where we were staying, and I got my iPad out, and I looked at personal trainers here in Cambridge for when I got back, and I got a personal trainer. And anyway, we basically got into fitness, right? Now, I lost 25 kg over 18 months, and I got fit, right, for the first time in donkey's years, because when you're a meditator, you can convince yourself that looking like the Buddha is actually quite spiritual. But, you know, you do have to wonder when you're getting close to 60, whether you're going to have a stroke or a heart attack. But anyway, the reason I'm mentioning it is 2018, my personal trainer introduced me to kettlebells, which are like weights with handles on. You might have seen them in the gym. And I ordered an 8 kilo one and so this 8 kilo kettlebell arrived, and I picked it up and good grief, that's heavy, right? So I Sunday morning is one of my workout mornings. So this morning I'm doing a workout, and the same exercise that I found really difficult with the 8 kilo kettlebell in 2018, I'm now doing with the 32 kilo kettlebell. So it's 4 times as heavy. The point being that it takes time to build up the muscles. If I'd have tried to pick up a 32 kilo kettlebell in 2017, I wouldn't have even been able to get it off the ground, and I would have given up because it felt like it was impossible. So what I have to do is I have to start where I am, push myself a little bit. But like with exercise, it's better to do a little bit and often, rather than go completely mental and just do too much all in one go. I think that's the temptation when we're operating in one mode. We go, actually, I'm going to give this meditation thing a try. And when we blast at it, we try and sit down and do 3 hours of meditation, and our head hurts, and we're constantly looking at our watch and thinking, oh, you know, it's only been 5 minutes. It feels like 5 years. And so building it up over time is something I need to do. So looking at it as a kind of like a fitness thing, as a muscle building thing, gradually, what I start to discover is actually I can do quite a lot of the metaphorical lifting of my life using these new spiritual muscles that I've developed. And so one of the ways in which to do that is to reflect on these inner values and inner qualities that I have inside myself, and find one maybe that I think I find that quite inspiring, or I've drawn on that in the past and it's been helpful to me. Let me work on building that muscle by using that a little bit more in my actions and interactions. And I think we just have to accept that this isn't something where I'm suddenly going to do it on demand without having spent some time building it up, just in the same way as I'm not going to be able to do 100 kettlebell snatches with a 16 kilo kettlebell, which is what I did to kill myself at the end of my workout this morning. I'm not going to be able to do that until I've learned the stance, the grip, I've got the flexibility, I've got, you know, the right structure, and all of that takes time to get to. So I think it's, you know, there isn't I've actually got here on my desk here, Mike, this is when I went to the Warner Brothers tour, I've actually got here my Harry Potter wand. So unfortunately, there isn't a Harry Potter wand for this, where you can suddenly magically become brilliant at it. It does take some application. But the wonderful thing is that if you do a bit of diligent application, very often you make a lot of progress quite quickly. And then that becomes the inspiration to do more. Just like with you go to the gym, and you know, you lose a bit of weight and you start to feel a bit better about yourself and you sleep better, and okay, so this becomes a reinforcing cycle too.
I believe we have another person who has unmuted.
Yes, it's Tejal. Thank you so much, Geoff. It was very inspiring to hear your experiences and the practices you adopt. I wanted to ask you, like, when sometimes you can catch yourself sort of toing and throwing different thoughts, and perhaps getting sort of muddled in your thoughts, what practices or approaches have you adopted that keep you grounded, that you think, right, okay, you know, I'm getting less lost in these thoughts, and I just like need to step away and get true to my sort of inner beliefs, values.
Yeah.
Is there something you could share?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things to recognize is, so there are lots of images and metaphors that become useful when you're starting to meditate, when you're practicing meditation. So one of the common ones is the idea of a lotus flower, and you know, lotus flower is famous because it's all beautiful and white and pristine and clean and unaffected by the fact that its roots are down in the muddy water underneath. So this is the idea that you live in a world where there's a lot going on that isn't particularly wonderful and beautiful, but it's possible to emerge from that in a way where you're in that but not affected by it. So that's a particular metaphor. But the one that came to mind with your question for me is the idea of a lake where, if you get big lakes. We had people on from America, so you get to somewhere like the Great Lakes, around Chicago, whatever. You get waves and you get wind, and there's a lot of movement on the surface. There are a lot of ripples on the surface, potentially quite a lot of swell on the surface. And that's a little bit like what can happen in the mind, where we get a lot of clutter going on on the surface. But the metaphor of a lake is that the deeper you go, the calmer it becomes. There's been this yacht sunk in near Italy in this last week. This mega yacht, and a multi-billionaire who's unfortunately, he and his daughter and a few other people died in this sinking. But the divers were saying that even though the weather has been disruptive on the surface, when they're down 50 meters, and they can't stay down there very long because of the restrictions in terms of humans' ability to submerge themselves deep in physical water. But it's very calm down there. There's not much going on. There's not much movement of the water at depth. So in the same way, if I have this understanding that, okay, I know there's all this buzzing and clutter and whatever going on the surface, but just having that insight that there is this still space, this still point, this depth within myself, that if I spend a little bit of time learning how to dive deep and go deeper into myself, I can actually get to a place of calm and peace inside myself, where although the clutter and the buzzing and all of that's going on, it's going on sort of on the surface, and I'm somewhere deeper where I feel more stable. And then I'm able to deal with circumstances and situations better. And the other metaphor, and this will be something if you've ever been to a retreat place, a BK retreat place, you'll know that often people say that the thing they remember when they're not regular meditators, when they're visitors who've come to a retreat center, they'll say the one thing they remember is the idea of traffic control. And this is where some music plays, usually every hour, a minute or so of music on the top of the hour. The idea of traffic control is a good metaphor for how we deal with the mind. So if you're aware that, if you use the analogy that the mind is like a road, and along the road is traffic, so there are bicycles, there are cars, there are buses, there are trucks, there's all sorts of stuff going along on the road. Now, if you're standing on the pavement or the sidewalk, and you're looking at the traffic going by, it doesn't really matter whether it's bicycles or trucks, because you're not affected. It's just going by, it's passing by. The problem is if you stand in the road, it can just be a bicycle and you get run over. So the idea is the relationship you have towards your thoughts is as the observer of your thoughts passing through, and you're not trying to stop them. Trying to stop them is to stand in the road, and you're going to get run down, even if it's only by a bicycle or a skateboard or somebody on one of those mad electric scooters that everybody rides around at the moment, right? So you're going to get knocked over if you stand in the road. So what you need to learn to do is not get better at stopping the traffic, but get better at standing back and observing the traffic. When you do that, what you notice is the traffic itself slows down, and there are less trucks and the traffic becomes lighter because of your relationship to the traffic of thoughts. So it's a big step for us in the West because we've been encouraged. I mentioned Descartes earlier, and Descartes' famous statement was cogito ergo sum, translated into English, I think, therefore I am. If you think, therefore you are, then you're the thinker and you cannot step out of the flow of your thoughts. If you recognize that thinking is part of your equipment, it's something that you can do, but you are not your thoughts, and you have the capacity to observe your thinking, then by stepping back and developing that muscle of being able to step back and look at your thoughts and watch them without them affecting you, because you're in the right relationship with them, then you have a lot more influence. And then in a way, it doesn't really matter what your thoughts are doing. And I still, donkey's years of experience of doing talks and things. And sometimes I'll be going up on stage and inside myself, I feel nervous. Now I could go, oh my God, I feel nervous. Why do I feel nervous? I shouldn't feel nervous. So am I going to make a mess of this? Because, oh crikey, I don't know what's going on. I don't normally feel nervous. I've got lots of experience. Why am I nervous? Now, if I do that, I'm really making that nervousness the center of my attention. And like now I'm worried because I'm worried that I'm nervous. Whereas what I will do now is the nervousness is there and I notice, oh, that's interesting. Nervousness is there. And then I'll just carry on doing what I'm going to do anyway. And then, the nervousness went. So it's about my relationship to what's going on in my mind and in my feelings, where I discover that they don't have as much power over me as I think they have. They only have the power over me that I give them and allow them to have over me.
Lovely. That is so insightful. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. I think we're a little past the scheduled time, so we may have to close the space for questions. Let us just have a minute of silence together, and then we can close the meeting.
Would you like just silence, Harvey, or would you like me to speak something?
If you'd like to share like a little meditation commentary, that would be lovely.
Okay. So if you just sit comfortably, reasonably upright, so your muscles aren't having to work too hard. Take a deep breath. As you breathe out, just relax. As you sit here, just be aware for the next few moments. You're just the observer of yourself. There may be all sorts of thoughts and feelings. You always have the opportunity to step back and observe them. And if you find yourself caught up in them, then just observe yourself being caught up in them. They will catch you. Your thoughts will take you off. Your feelings will take you off. The moment you notice it's happened, you regain your power. You don't have to do anything. Just simply observe what is going on inside you. Happiness, sorrow, peace, frustration. All of these things come and go like weather comes and goes. But you know, if you get in a plane and you get to 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet, all the weather's below you and you're just in blue sky and sunshine. And in the same way, stepping back and observing what is going on inside the self enables you to become free, and to rise above, and to see things with clarity. So just find a little time each day, a few minutes, maybe when you first get up or when you go to bed. And just develop this muscle of observing the self and see what you discover. This is the doorway to this experience of Om Shanti. Om, I am. Shanti, peace, silence, calmness. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Geoff. I just quickly want to share something that we have planned for the upcoming week. Can we have the poster? Meditate together for the same topic. So all the details for the Zoom meeting are on there. You can join us if you're free, and we would love to have you there. This is how you can get in touch with Upton Park Center. This is our email address and our phone numbers. If you would like to subscribe to the mailing list to sort of be in touch with us for upcoming events, you can type the URL in and it'll give you the website. We also upload copies of the talks on our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to rewatch this one or rewatch some others, most welcome.